The NBA playoffs are finally here, and the Boston Celtics are set to kick things off with a matchup that brings both intrigue and history. A first-round showdown against the Orlando Magic. After a long regular season and a tense play-in battle, the Magic have secured the 7th seed and will travel to TD Garden this Sunday for Game 1 of what could be a compelling series. Tip-off is scheduled for 3 o'clock Eastern, and you can already feel the energy shifting. Boston is bracing itself for playoff basketball, and fans are eager to see how this veteran Celtics team responds to the pressure and expectations. Now, this matchup hasn't been a frequent sight in recent years. Boston and Orlando haven't met in the playoffs for a while, and the Magic come into this series with a young, gritty roster built around defensive identity and resilience. They earned their spot by knocking off the Atlanta Hawks in the play-in, showing just how scrappy and tough they can be when it matters. But they're facing a whole different beast now. The Celtics are not just playoff tested, they're built for a championship run. This team is deeper, more experienced, and frankly, carrying the weight of expectations that come when you're one of the top seeds in the league. Still, if anyone thinks this is going to be a cakewalk, think again. Yes, Boston is widely seen as the favorite, and rightly so. They've dominated for large stretches of the regular season, and when fully healthy, they look like one of the most complete teams in the NBA. But it's important not to overlook what the Orlando Magic have done this season. They've already beaten the Celtics twice, both wins coming under very different circumstances, and those games showed flashes of what this young Magic core is capable of when they're locked in. One of those victories came with Boston resting key starters, so you can take that with a grain of salt. But the other? That one was no fluke. Looking ahead to this first-round series, it's clear that Boston holds most of the cards. They've got star power, elite shooting, playoff experience, and the home court advantage. But matchups matter, and when you break down the details, there are a few warning signs that the Celtics simply can't afford to ignore. Orlando may be the underdog, but they're a defensive-minded team that knows how to limit outside shooting and control the tempo. They're not flashy, but they grind games down and force you to work for every bucket. That's something Boston has struggled with at times this season, especially against teams that slow the pace and play physical. Now, let's talk numbers. In the regular season, Boston's blowout win against Orlando, one where they won by nearly 30 points, was largely fueled by their red-hot shooting from beyond the arc. They hit almost half of their three-point attempts in that game, and it was a reminder of just how dangerous this team can be when the shots are falling. But in one of the losses, that number dipped to just over 20%. That's a massive swing. And if there's one thing we've learned about the Celtics, it's that when the threes aren't dropping, they can look surprisingly vulnerable. This series could very well come down to execution from the perimeter. Boston is one of the highest volume three-point shooting teams in the league. They live and die by the deep ball. But Orlando has built their defensive scheme to take those looks away. They close out hard, rotate quickly, and have the length to bother shooters all night long. That's the kind of matchup that forces Boston to think twice, to move the ball better, to avoid settling. And it's why the Celtics can't afford a slow start. They need to set the tone in Game 1, especially at home, and make sure the Magic don't gain any early confidence. Let's not forget, Orlando doesn't play at a fast pace either. They're methodical, they're deliberate, and they love to drag opponents into half-court battles where every possession feels like a mini-war. That works to Boston's advantage too. This isn't a track meet. It's going to be a chess match, and that's where the Celtics' experience needs to shine. With a core that includes Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Al Horford, and Kristaps Porzingis, this team knows how to handle the playoff atmosphere. They've been here. They played in big games. They've suffered heartbreak and tasted triumph. That matters in April. That poise and familiarity with high-stakes basketball is something the Magic simply don't have yet. And speaking of key players, all eyes will be on Tatum. He hasn't played in either of the losses to Orlando this season, which means, statistically speaking, he's undefeated against them this year. His presence changes everything, not just because of his scoring, but because of how he draws defensive attention, how he creates space for teammates, and how he controls the flow of the offense. If he's locked in, Boston becomes incredibly tough to beat. Add Jaylen Brown to the mix, who's been dealing with a minor knee issue but is expected to play. And suddenly this Celtics team looks every bit like a top contender. On the other side, Orlando is mostly healthy, aside from a couple of notable absences. Jalen Suggs and Moritz Wagner are both out for the series after undergoing surgery, which leaves the Magic a bit thin in the rotation. That could become a factor as the games pile up and the minutes get heavier. Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner, however, are good to go, and they're going to be the ones carrying the load. Banchero has blossomed into a strong inside presence, and Wagner brings that versatile two-way game that makes him a matchup problem on both ends. They're young, but they're fearless, and that's the kind of attitude that could make things interesting. One thing to keep an eye on, Boston needs to keep Orlando's stars away from the paint. That's where the Magic are most dangerous. They're not a team that's going to beat you with a barrage of threes. That's not their identity. But they will grind out points in the paint, use their size to their advantage, and crash the boards relentlessly. If Boston lets them get too comfortable inside, this series could get a lot tougher than it needs to be. So here's the early outlook. Boston has the tools, the talent, and the track record to take control. They should win this series. Most predictions have them wrapping it up in 4 or 5 games, and that seems realistic, especially if they come out swinging in the first 2. But if they underestimate this Orlando squad, if they let the young guys build momentum, things could shift quickly. The playoffs are all about adjustments, energy, and execution. Boston has been through it all before. Orlando? Not quite. That difference alone could shape the story of this first-round matchup. When it comes to playoff basketball, the little details matter more than ever. Every possession, every rotation, every decision becomes amplified. For the Boston Celtics, this series against the Orlando Magic is not just about advancing. It's about making a statement. They need to show that they're locked in from the jump, that they're not going to play down to the competition, and that this is a group determined to return to the NBA Finals. The Eastern Conference is no joke this year, and a team like Boston can't afford to waste time or energy letting a young opponent hang around. That brings us to one of the most important factors in this series: pace control. During the regular season, Boston had a tendency to play to the rhythm of their opponent. If the other team sped things up, the Celtics would often try to match that tempo, and if the game slowed down, they'd settle into a half-court grind. That flexibility can be useful, but it also becomes a trap if the team loses its own identity in the process. Boston has one of the slowest paces in the league, and while that might not be exciting, it works for them. They're deliberate. They pick their spots, and they lean on efficient shooting to separate themselves. The good news is that Orlando plays a similarly slow brand of basketball. They're not going to push the pace unless the situation calls for it. So this series won't be about speed, it'll be about control. And control is something Boston has to establish early. They can't let the Magic dictate the flow. They can't play reactive basketball. The Celtics need to come out and impose their will, particularly in those opening home games. When you have home court advantage, you have to use it. That means setting the tone with energy, discipline, and a level of physicality that shows you the team in charge. There's also the question of mindset. Boston has been here before. This core group has been through conference finals, brutal Game 7s, and even a trip to the finals itself. They've seen what it takes to win, and what happens when you fall short. That kind of experience gives them an edge, especially against a team like Orlando that's still figuring things out. The Magic have a lot of talent, but they haven't faced this kind of pressure before. Boston has to play like a team that's already been through the fire. No panic, no overreactions, just business. Veteran leadership plays a huge role in this. Al Horford is 38 years old, but he's still anchoring this team with wisdom and consistency. He doesn't need to put up 20 points. His presence alone changes the game. Then there's Jason Tatum, now 26, fully stepping into his prime. He's no longer the young guy on the rise. He's the centerpiece. Everything runs through him, and how he starts this series will set the tone for what's to come. If he's aggressive, if he's locked in defensively, if he's finding teammates and attacking mismatches, Boston will thrive. But experience only matters if it shows up on the court. That's why this team has to avoid playing with unnecessary pressure. It's easy to get caught up in the expectations, especially when everyone's picking you to win. But the Celtics need to focus on execution, not narratives. That means taking care of the ball, attacking weak spots, and making life miserable for Orlando's key players. It's not about showing off. It's about doing the dirty work. The Celtics are at their best when they play with that edge, when they're diving for loose balls, when they're rotating hard, when they're making the extra pass instead of settling for early jumpers. Shooting is another key element. There's a magic number this season, 36% from deep. When the Celtics hit that mark, or better, they win. Simple as that. They've done it 37 times this year, and they've walked away with victories in nearly all of those games. It's not about volume alone. It's about efficiency. Boston will get their looks. They shoot a ton of threes. In fact, they lead the league in attempts. But if those shots aren't falling, and if they're not creating the right kind of space, that advantage disappears. Against Orlando, this becomes even more important. The Magic are excellent at defending the three-point line. They know how to rotate, how to contest, how to close out hard without fouling. They make it tough. So Boston needs to be sharp. They need to move the ball. They need to create rhythm. It's not just about launching early threes. It's about finding the open man and taking smart shots. If the Celtics fall in a hero ball, they'll be in trouble. But if they trust their offense, they should be able to wear Orlando down over the course of 4 quarters. And let's not forget the matchup challenges. In 3 games this season, we've seen a clear trend. When Boston shoots poorly, they struggle. In the game where Tatum didn't play and the team shot under 25% from deep, they got beat. In contrast, when the roster was complete and the threes were falling, they dominated. It's that simple. Depth matters too. The bench needs to show up. Guys like Derek White and Peyton Pritchard have to bring energy and production when the starters rest. That second unit has the potential to swing games if they play smart, push the pace when it's available, and keep the intensity up. Now, one player who could sneak up and become a problem is Cole Anthony. He's not a starter, but he's dangerous. He comes off the bench with confidence, and when he gets hot, he can pile up points in a hurry. He's not someone you game plan your whole defense around, but he's the type of player who can steal momentum if left unchecked. Boston needs to make sure they put the right defenders on him, especially when he's looking to drive or pull up in transition. Limiting his impact won't just shut down a scoring option. It'll also take the air out of Orlando's second unit, which is already thinned out due to injuries. Defensively, Boston should look to funnel Orlando's bigs out to the perimeter. Banchero and Wagner are legitimate threats in the paint, and they're tough to stop when they get downhill. But if you can force them to shoot from deep, where they've been inconsistent all season, you give yourself a better chance to contain their offense. Neither one of them is lights out from 3. Banchero sits around 32%, and Wagner is even lower. That's not their strength. So Boston needs to build a wall in the paint, contest without fouling, and force those tough outside looks. Let them beat you from deep if they can. Just don't let them live in the lane. But before we continue, please remember to subscribe to the channel and give the video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest news about the Boston Celtics. Feel free to share your thoughts on the news in the comments as well. Imagine the unthinkable. Nikola Jokić, the reigning MVP and one of the greatest players to ever step on an NBA court, making his way to the Boston Celtics. Could this be the next blockbuster move in the NBA? The rumors have been swirling, and the buzz around this possibility is electrifying. A partnership between Jokić and the Celtics would undoubtedly shake up the entire landscape of the NBA, sending shockwaves throughout the league. But what would this mean for the Celtics, the NBA, and, of course, the Joker himself? Nikola Jokić, known for his incredible versatility and unselfish play, has been the heart and soul of the Denver Nuggets for years. His skill set is unlike anything the league has seen in decades, combining the vision of a point guard with the power of center. A 3-time MVP and reigning NBA Finals MVP, Jokić has proven time and again that he is a force to be reckoned with. His ability to orchestrate the game from the center position is unmatched, and he has carried the Nuggets to unprecedented heights, including their first-ever championship in 2023. But the possibility of Jokić donning a Celtic jersey is more than just a hypothetical scenario. It's a potential game-changer for both the team and the player. The Celtics, a storied franchise with a rich history of success, have been in need of that final piece to push them over the top. Jokić could be the exact player that elevates Boston to the next level, making them instant favorites in the Eastern Conference. Imagine a front-court pairing of Jokić alongside Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, a combination of size, skill, and basketball IQ that could dominate for years. For Jokić, a move to Boston would bring new challenges and a fresh opportunity to solidify his legacy in a different market. While the Nuggets have been loyal to their star player, Jokić has always expressed a desire to win at the highest level. The Celtics, with their championship pedigree, could provide him with that chance. The move would also bring a change in culture and expectations. Boston is a city that expects nothing less than greatness, and Jokić would be expected to deliver. However, the logistics of such a trade are far from simple. The Celtics would need to part ways with a substantial amount of talent to secure Jokić, and the Nuggets would have to decide if trading their MVP and franchise cornerstone is worth it. While the speculation continues to swirl, one thing is clear. This potential move has the NBA world on edge. The prospect of Jokić joining forces with the Celtics is enough to make any basketball fan sit on the edge of their seat, eagerly awaiting what could be the biggest story of the season. Could we see Jokić in green? Only time will tell. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Boston Celtics, please subscribe to our channel and give the video a like. We always appreciate your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.